To start, let's hear views on whether human beings are the only form of intelligent life in the universe. Professor Monica Grady, Professor Emerita of Planetary Science at the Open University in Britain, offers the following.
Gut feeling, no. Gut feeling is, are we the only intelligent civilization in the universe? I can't give an answer to that because on a statistical basis, it's like, well, it's bonkers to think that we're the only advanced civilization. But where are they then? I would be really, really happy, I hope, to be convinced that we aren't the only intelligent civilization, but I don't know.
Astrobiologist and theoretical physicist Professor Sarah Walker of Arizona State University nuances her view.
Currently, I think yes, but it depends on what you mean by unique. I think in the sense that evolution might construct complex things that can think very deeply about the world. We might not be the only such entities in the universe, but I think there are a lot of things about us that make it such that I think humans only emerged on our planet and only will have emerged on our planet.
But how do we set about determining the likelihood of there being intelligent aliens elsewhere? Back in 1965, an astrophysicist named Frank Drake, who taught the famed Carl Sagan, by the way, wrote an equation to indicate all of the terms that would be needed to estimate the probability of extraterrestrial civilizations existing in the universe. That equation probably used up a lot of chalk and space on Frank Drake's blackboard. Fortunately, for the non-physicists like you and me, Sarah Walker is on hand to guide us through what that means.
Frank Drake's approach was to break down all of the probabilities that we might try to look at to try to constrain how many civilizations there are. So he thought about how many stars there are in a galaxy and how many of those stars might make planets. So that becomes the first term, is how many stars around them have planets. How many of those planets are Earth-like? How many of those Earth-like worlds have an origin, a life event? How many of those that emerge life have complex life evolve? And how many of those that have complex life evolve into a technological civilization that might be communicating that we could actually identify? And so there's a sequence of probabilities, all of them unknown when Frank Drake wrote down the equation, that allow us to at least try to estimate each probability independently and then say something perhaps about the likelihood of extraterrestrial civilizations.
The Hubble Space Telescope is an amazing technological marvel. Launched in 1990, it marked the beginning of a revolution in our ability to make observations further and further into space, and thus deeper and deeper into the history of the cosmos. Thanks to continuing advances in space telescopes, we can now begin to put at least some numbers into the Drake equation. And these numbers are big, very, very big. Dr. Jennifer Wiseman shares her experience of getting a glimpse into the sheer scale of these numbers.
One of my favorite images is called the Ultra Deep Field from the Hubble Space Telescope. And by deep field, what that means is that the telescope was pointed in a direction of the sky that didn't really have a lot of nearby stars to dominate the picture, and just collected faint light over several days so that the faintest things in that direction of the sky would show up in the image. And the result is this collection of little smudges of light, which are not stars. Every little smudge of light in this image is another galaxy. So, we now understand that a galaxy contains hundreds of billions of stars, and that our own sun is just one star in our own galaxy, which we call the Milky Way. But we now know there are hundreds of billions of other galaxies, each containing billions, sometimes hundreds of billions of stars.
So we've learned that the number of galaxies in the universe is breathtaking in scale. But does that get us any nearer to a number of probable alien civilizations?
I think the overall answer to Frank Drake's equation is still bounded between none and an awful lot. But that being said, we have constrained at least some of the probabilities. So we do now know, which we didn't then, that most stars have planets around them. And that was just discovered in the last few decades, how many planets there really are around other stars. And we are also getting, better at estimating how many of those planets are Earth-like. And so we now estimate almost every star has planets, and many of those planets might be Earth-like. So the first couple astronomical terms are actually becoming much more precisely defined. So that helps a lot. And in some sense, people become very optimistic that the likelihood of intelligent life is high because we know there's so many planets out there. But the rest of the terms in the Drake equation, the ones having to do with life, starting from the origin of life and the evolution into complexity, are still fairly unconstrained. So we don't know, even if there are abundant Earth-like planets out there, how many of them are inhabited.